Hey, how you doing? I am Coach Ryan Fanley. I am here in the Viper Pit. Today I'm going to give you a blueprint for building bigger guns. Now the principles that I'm going to show you really apply to any muscle group, but specifically today I want to talk about arms. Why arms? Well, because everybody in the gym wants bigger arms, wants stronger arms. It's kind of the first reason a lot of people started training. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. So I want to help you be able to design your own program effectively. What I see when I go to gyms across the world is people doing the same crap day in and day out and wonder why they never change. So with that being said, let's dig right in. The first two things you have to understand, the first two principles that are constantly at tug of war with one another are the principles of accommodation versus specificity. When we talk about specificity, it's pretty obvious. If you want to curl the most weight you can for 10 repetitions, curling heavy weights for sets of 10 is pretty darn specific. The problem is accommodation rears its ugly head after a period of time. So the body will adapt to whatever you do to it after a period of time. That's why the same people that are just curling sets of 10 for years on end with no progress, that's why they don't have progress. It's because accommodation. So we need to create enough change frequently enough to prevent adaptation and accommodation, but still not so much that we don't follow specificity. Or we also need to make sure we're waving in and out of more specific and least specific phases. Now the arms are interesting because arms are directly involved with all upper body movements. So any kind of heavy pressing or pulling, so your bench presses, your shoulder presses, your rows, your pull-ups, your chin-ups, all involve the arms to a certain degree. However, if you want to maximize your arm size, it's usually a good idea to add some direct work on top of that. Now the way the training process works, forgive the little graph here. This dotted line here represents your baseline. So let's say your baseline, and this is completely arbitrary here, let's say you can curl 100 pounds for 10 reps. So you start your workout and you do your 100 pounds times 10 reps. And then you create fatigue, so you dip down. So by the end of the workout, maybe you can only do 80 pounds times 10 reps. What happens is you have a supercompensation response where the body then recovers, and now when you come back for your next workout, you might be able to do 105 pounds times 10 reps. So now 105 is your new baseline, and then you recover and get a little higher. So basically, you're creating fatigue, recovering from fatigue, creating fatigue, recovering from fatigue, always hoping to drive that overall level higher. Now, there's several ways that you can create that fatigue and drive that progress. VIF. V stands for volume. Volume is basically the amount of work you do. So sets times reps times weight. 10 sets of 10 reps with 100 pounds is what? 100,000 pounds of volume. Okay, that's how you would measure volume. Total workload, essentially. Intensity is the I. Sorry, a little spelling error there. Can't write. Intensity is how high of a percentage effort compared to your maximum effort are you working. So this gets a little tricky because a lot of people think that hard workouts where their heart rate's really elevated and their legs are burning or their arms are burning if they're doing a bunch of curls is more intense, but intensity is actually more intense to do a single rep just one time with the heaviest weight you can lift than it is to do 20 sets of 20 reps, okay? Even though the latter feels like it would be more intense. So intensity is basically how heavy are you working. When we talk about the weight room, we're talking about load on the bar or percentage of your best effort. And then frequency is how often do you train it. So a lot of people don't think about this one, but it's very important. A lot of people will train their body part one time per week directly. Why not two? Why not three? I've talked about this. I've touched on this a little bit before when we look at muscle protein synthesis. Muscle protein synthesis stays elevated in a muscle for 24 to 48 hours post-workout, which means for that period of time, you're laying down muscle tissue at an accelerated rate. So it makes sense then, if you do it wisely, to train frequently for a period of time, where maybe you train every other day for a given body part so that you're maximizing the amount of time spent in muscle protein synthesis. Here's the tricky part about all these, is they can't all be elevated at once for very long or you're gonna get hurt. So you can't do a ton of sets and reps with a super heavy weight a bunch of times per week. Typically, 2 of these can be high and the other is low. So if you want to do a lot of sets with a heavy weight, you can't do it that often. If you want to do a lot of sets, very frequently, then it can't be that heavy. If you want to do super heavy and very frequently, then you can't do a ton of sets, okay? So you want to waive this approach. Now, when we talk specifically about arms too, it's also important to understand there is a huge, tremendous benefit for taking periods of time where you stop training your arms altogether, directly anyway. That's where you focus on things like your bench press, focus on your shoulder press, focus on your chin up and pull up, where the arms are still receiving a stimulus from those lifts so they won't completely detrain. But what that does is it resensitizes that muscle tissue to direct work later on down the road. So over the years, I've seen far greater results with myself and with clients in building bigger arms by taking certain periods of the year where there's no direct arm work. And that goes for all these things. That's why sometimes you want to have phases where you're just doing a lot of volume and you're not really doing it too heavy. There's other times you want to go super heavy, not a lot of sets and reps. And other times you want to go very often, okay, but maybe not too heavy. There's also a case to be made for including all these at once for a very small period of time. And I like to call that a shock microcycle or a specialization phase, which we will touch on in a minute. So how could this look? I'm going to give you kind of 30 weeks of how you could structure your program. Basically 5 phases. You like the pretty colors here? And I color code everything, make it all fancy. I'm getting real fancy up in here. All right. Phase 1, starting off, doing a lot of volume. So things like 8 sets of 8 of several different exercises for your arms. Things like giant sets, tri-sets, super sets are all good options here. And you do that for 6 weeks. Push it hard, with the trend being that over the course of the 6 weeks, your volume goes up and up and up. It could be as simple as you start with 6 work sets for your biceps and 6 work sets for your triceps, and each week you add another work set till you get to the end of that phase, increasing the volume. Phase 2, now we're going to jack up the frequency, so we're going to train often, which means it's not going to be a lot of sets each time, and it's not going to be super heavy. So what would that look like? Maybe Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you do 2 sets for biceps, two sets for biceps, 2 sets for triceps. So you're exposing it to a direct stimulus 3 times per week. Again, taking advantage of that elevated muscle protein synthesis. Now, phase 3, we're going to jack up the intensity. So we'll go back to training it maybe once per week, once every 5 days or so. And we're going to go heavy weights, not a lot of sets, not very often. Okay, and those heavy weights are going to stimulate those fast twitch muscle fibers, especially in the biceps, are very important. Now, phase 4, we're going to go full shock mode, which means we're going to have a high volume, a high frequency, and a high intensity for 6 weeks. All right. Here's the rub. You have to really listen to your body here. If something feels wrong, just skip it for the day, live to lift another day. And you can't be stupid about it. This will not last forever. You can do it for a short period of time, and then you must cycle off, which is why in phase 5, what do? No direct arm work whatsoever. We spend the next 6 weeks after that focusing on things like pull-ups, rows, shoulder presses, bench presses, etc. So this is kind of a blueprint of how you could lay it out. A lot of people don't put this much structure or change into their training programs. This is just one way to do it. There's a lot of different ways to do it. This is one way that's quite effective. Now, to close today, you could make your own programs, or if you check out the link below in the description, you will get, I teamed up with my brother from another mother, Vince Del Monte, and we created a arm specialization program for you. So it's a 6-week arm shock phase and we're getting some pretty good results. We've beta tested it. We've had some people put on quite a bit of size to their arm circumference in that 6-week phase. And then when they subsequently return, the funny thing is a lot of people are growing even more when they go to that phase where they are not doing any direct arm work after the program. So check that link out below. If you like this video, please hit subscribe below. I'm Coach Ryan Fanley, and I will see you next time.